Hello, my name is Kerry George and I am with CIBN Connect. And today I'm going to be talking to you about public speaking and how to be practiced and prepared, ready for anything. I'm going to cover some of our journey in this and share with you, how this is advantageous for business owners, for entrepreneurs, for coaches. And I'm even going to cover some of the most common roadblocks, how to overcome them, and how to get started. Hello, I'm Kerry George with CIBN Connect, and we have been working with business owners for more than 15 years, thousands of them every year. And the topic of public speaking has been coming up right from the beginning, about 2011 when we got started. I actually began by running an in-person business network where business owners would stand up in a room that was in person, and they would share, who I am and what do I do in 60 seconds. And you know what would happen? Many of them would freeze up. They wouldn't be able to talk. And this is where we discovered that public speaking is actually important for all kinds of business owners, for entrepreneurs, and that it's really important because you got to be able to share your message. You got to be able to say, this is who I am, this is what I do. Sometimes you have to be able to give a presentation. I mean, what would happen if you got this perfect boardroom of people who invited you over to pitch them on whatever it is that you offer? And you walk in the room, and I mean, it's the best crowd you could possibly ask for, the best group of buyers. But you know what? You freeze. You're like, panic mode. Why does that happen? Well, it has a lot to do with being practiced and prepared. And I'm going to share a little bit more about that. But before I do, let's talk about a few more reasons about why it's important to be a public speaker, to be able to talk in front of a group of people. And, it's about influence. It's about being able to, say with confidence, this is what I think you guys should do. Whether you're in a small room that's a boardroom of 5 to 10 people, or whether you're in front of a bigger group of maybe 40 people, or maybe you're online. Maybe you're going into an online meeting and you have an opportunity to give a presentation and there's 20 or 100 people in this online meeting. You want to be able to be ready. You want to know what to say, and you want it to lead somewhere where it's actually going to be advantageous for you to having done that speaking engagement. Sometimes it's because people want to be on podcasts. But, I have met entrepreneurs. In fact, I had one lady that I was working with one time, and she told me she was on 65 podcasts in a year, and she hadn't made a single sale. What was that all about? Okay. Well, at CIBN Connect, we have a speakers program where we teach people how to overcome this stuff and how to actually get sales from the stuff that you're doing, like speaking. But today I'm going to tell you a lot of it just has to do with being practiced and prepared. And there's so many reasons why you want to be practiced and prepared. I mean, maybe it's because you need to increase the revenue in your business. Maybe it's because you need more exposure for whatever the product or the service is that you're selling. Maybe you just want to have more confidence because you want to have those opportunities where even you have a one-on-one with somebody and you want to just have more confidence in that environment and be able to close the deal, right? For all of those reasons, it is important to be practiced and prepared. And you want to be able to take your business to the next level. So let's talk first of all about this fear of public speaking, because you know what, it's real. And I have seen it. As I have mentioned, in the beginning, we had these people would stand up and say, this is who I am, this is what I do for just a few minutes, or maybe even 30 seconds. And sometimes their knees would knock. I've had people break into tears, and they're so, frustrated with themselves. They feel like, that this is just such an overwhelming situation of having to talk in front of a small group or 10 or even 20 people. Public speaking, apparently, is as feared as death and rattlesnakes. For real. Okay? People really struggle with this. And it's not as easy as just waving a magic wand, okay, and getting rid of your fears. Now, some people really have overwhelming fear, and maybe they actually need a little therapy or something. Maybe they need to work through some of the things in their mind that are causing the sabotage. Maybe that's what's going on. But oftentimes, what we have found with working with people, and so many of them in this situation, one of the basic things that we can do that actually causes great comfort and increases their ease is just practice. Most people are afraid of public speaking because they haven't done any. So they just automatically assume that it was like an awful experience because it's something out of their comfort zone, you know? And sometimes we feel like if it's out of our comfort zone, I don't even want to do it. I don't even want to try because it's just so far out of my comfort zone. But you know what? We're not growing as human beings. We're not growing in our business if we don't sometimes do things that are outside of our comfort zone. You know, it's really important for our growth, you know, spiritually, our growth, you know, psychologically, our growth in friendships and communities and relationships. You know, it's good to do things that stretch us. But how do we get out of that discomfort? Well, practice is a really important piece, okay? And I'm going to share a little bit of my personal history here just to kind of give you some reference. I have had a lot of practice, a lot over the years, but I didn't start out that way. But I did start out young. I started out trying as a young person. I was in drama when I was in high school. You know, I continued to do some community theater right after high school. I got into sales shortly after high school and, you know, would have to stand in front of a few people to share sales presentations. So that gave me some practice. As time went on, I was on a few stages, you know, giving some public speaking type of, you know, deliveries. And then as I got a little older, in my 30s, I entered into the ministry. I was a pastor for about 15 years. And as a pastor, I had to speak about 7 times a week in front of a group of people. Sometimes it was just like 10 people around a kitchen table. Oftentimes it was 40 to 100 people in a congregation. But sometimes I even had to speak in front of 10,000 people. I had a few opportunities that was like big stages and where I had to give, in one instance, I had to do like a 2-hour presentation in front of a really large group like that. And, you know, so I had this practice. Now, fast forward, okay, about 2011, we started becoming involved in the business network. And really, at first, I was just somebody going out trying to sell my services. I was in marketing. And I went out to networking events to try to get in front of other people so I could talk about marketing. And doorways started to open up. Things started to happen in my marketing business. And I had an opportunity to volunteer at a networking organization. And that usually meant standing in front of 20 to 40 people talking about marketing, online marketing, you know, social media marketing, that kind of stuff. And so I had this platform and I had practice. Oftentimes this would happen on once a week. As time went on, I took over that business network. A little bit while later, I actually bought another one. And this opened up more stages for me and more people asking me to come and speak for them and their organizations as well. And I wanted to share something with you. Have you ever heard that you become a professional at anything that you spend 10,000 hours at? It's true. If you spend a lot of time doing something, you just get better and better at it. Practicing makes perfect, okay? So when you are prepared, you've put together your notes, you've got something that you're following, you know, or maybe you've even, memorized a speech, but you've done it many times over and over and over again, you are prepared. I personally don't like to memorize my speeches and I don't like to read them because I feel like it looks canned and you can tell, you know, if somebody's reading a script, even if I wrote it myself, it still looks canned. So I personally like to prepare by preparing some notes. I like to just kind of make a few highlights that I'm going to follow and talk about. and then I follow along. In fact, even today, I have my notes stuck to the front of the computer right here. It's got a little list for you, okay, of the things that I'm talking about right now. And all it is a few things on here. Just remind me to stay on topic and remind me of some of the stories that I want to tell, and just kind of keep me on point as I go through. Now, I can use just a little list like this of 5 items. I don't know if the camera will let you actually see it. I think the lighting is kind of taking away the words on there. But really, I have 5 or 6 points on here. It's very, very simple. And because I'm practiced and I've had so much practice over the years, I don't need a lot to stay on track, okay? But before, when I first started, and I remember when I was a minister of the gospel, the first sermon that I prepared took me like 14 hours. I was like working on it and working on it and working on it. And I really wanted to feel prepared before I got up in front of this crowd of people to deliver that first sermon in my first church. It was really, really important to me that I was prepared. So I spent a lot of time getting ready for it. And oftentimes when we talk about a signature talk, the one talk that you do, this is a great idea to have one talk. And I'm going to do more about this in another video about the one talk. But I want you to know that is a great way of being prepared, because if you have one basic talk and one basic ask that you're asking people to do, whether it be 15 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour or whatever it is, you can get really good at that one talk through preparation. You make out the notes, you follow the notes. You look at your script, you memorize pieces of it, you figure out what stories fit in it, and you prepare over this period of time. And then you practice, practice, practice. And if you don't have any place to practice, practice in front of the mirror, practice in front of the cat, okay? Practice in front of a friend, get feedback. One of the advantages of being part of CIBN Connect is that we have peer practice. You can actually get in front of a group of people who are like you. They're business owners, they're authors, they're coaches. They're people who, they themselves have something that they want to practice. And you can practice on each other and you can get feedback. Feedback is incredibly powerful. It really helps you to learn what's working, what's resonating with your audience. And it really helps you get more prepared for the best, presentation that you can do. The more practice you have, the better you get at this. And you know what? That is really important. Let's say you're a salesperson or you're somebody, your business is, got an offer to sell, and you get in front of that ideal audience. The boardroom where they invited you in because they're considering taking your $25,000 program. That's a great opportunity. So exciting. Well, if you get in there and you've had no practice, what happens? Just about every time you don't get the deal, you bomb, because you weren't ready for being in the room. You were a little bit nervous, a little bit off. You missed some of the cues. You weren't watching what their reactions were or really interacting with them because you weren't prepared and you weren't practiced. So one of the valuable things about being part of a community like CIBN Connect is that you get the opportunity to prepare, the opportunity to present. You get the practice in front of people because we've got summits and we've got small groups that you can practice in front of. And then we've got larger things, and you can even put on your own webinars in front of our groups. So those opportunities give you both things, the preparedness and the practice. And when you do that, it really, really changes everything. So I would just encourage you to find out more. Follow some of the other videos in this series as well, because I'm going to be giving some more training and tips for speakers so that you can get better. Because, everybody would love to be, I'm not saying everybody, because not everybody loves public speaking, but the public speakers they know, they would love to be paid for their speaking, right? So I'm going to be talking about that in the series as well. How do you get paid gigs? And then how do you get even just more payment through the things that you're offering by making the offers correctly. So you're going to want to follow along. I'm going to be sharing with you more on how to be practiced and prepared. But I think for today, we've got a lot to get started with, and a lot to think about. How could you get more hours of practice And I'm just going to encourage you, come and join the tribe and be part of what we're doing at CIBN Connect, because this is an opportunity for you to have that practice and to be prepared in all of it. Hope to see you soon. I'm Kerry George with CIBN Connect. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, CIBN TV. We'll see more of you soon. Bye-bye.